Good evening. I am Councillor Conyard, Vice Chairman of the Planning Healthier Stronger Communities Policy Advisory Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the meeting. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings? I ask this so the people at the meeting will know that this will be happening. No? Cool. If the fire alarm sounds during the meeting, please remain seated and the members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Right. First of all, are there any apologies? Yes, oh, sorry. I have apologies from Councillor Clark and Councillor Povey. Substitutes, I can see Councillor Field and I can see Councillor Chevka. Thank you, sorry. There are no urgent items. Item 4, are there any visiting members? I can't see any. No. Fantastic. Are there any disclosures by members or officers? No. I see none. Item 6, are there any disclosures of lobbying? No, I see none. I move that all items be taken in public. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. I ask if there are any comments on the accuracy of the minutes from the previous meeting. Councillor Greenan.
Thank you. Yes, page 2, the fourth line from the bottom says Tunbridge Wells Borough Council. I believe it should be Tunbridge and Malden Borough Council.
Okay, I have that noted and updated. Are there any further comments on the accuracy? Okay, subject to that amendment, are the minutes agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 9, the forward plan. Are there any comments members would like to make on the forward plan or any announcements from the Cabinet? Councillor Greenan.
Just a small point. Page 4, spatial planning, says it will be brought to committee on the 13th of January. I think it should say the 7th of January.
Thank you. And Councillor Summerskill.
Yes, the same comment I've made on Tuesday's pack. Top of page 8, the fees and charges item is lead member is myself and not climate transition and nature recovery. Fees and charges on page 8, lead member, cabinet member for corporate resources.
Thank you, Councillor Summerskill. So moving on to the business of the meeting, we've got item 10, which is the KPIs. This is to be introduced by Councillor Thompson, Cabinet Member for Healthier Stronger Communities. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm looking at page 15 of the papers. We are very pleased to be reporting on the improvement in KPIs for those relevant to healthy, stronger communities. We can see a significant improvement in the 6-month period performance compared with the previous year. The papers following show a mixture of the items which we are obliged to report on, although they are based on data which comes externally and are things over which the Council has relatively little influence. Footfall in the town centre being one of those issues. I'm constantly in conversation with our economic development staff about the possible levers that we might have to influence those at 2.11. Nevertheless, I'm very satisfied that the efforts made by our Business Terrace unit, I in fact was with visitors at the Business Terrace this morning. A wide range of business people were there, very enthusiastically engaging with one another and reporting on the excellent help that they had. So, in as much as it is within our remit to do so, I'm very confident that Maidstone Borough Council is doing what it can to maintain town centre retail footfall, the business activities, and that Maidstone Borough Council is supporting those vigorously. Obviously, I'm very pleased with the increasing visitors numbers at Maidstone Museum, precisely as we would expect given the new excellent exhibitions that are now present there with Liza Dow Landscape and the Oldham Gallery. Very impressive increases in footfall there. The school's work is continuing to blossom. I'm amazed as to how many small people there are from the schools nearby going to the museum, and I'm in further conversation with Natalie Moore at the museum and her staff as to how we can further increase the reach of Maidstone Museum with our local schools. And of course at 2.13 the Creative Maidstone Arts Hub is really hitting its stride now. We've had the Tony Hart exhibition, the centenary exhibition there with his daughter, splashed across the news nationally and indeed internationally. That's been a real fillip to the town, and the wide offer of activities that are going on there are really picking up pace. So I'm hugely grateful to staff for their excellent work in getting that going, Anne-Marie Langley in particular for leading this excellent project. We look forward to it being, indeed as we hoped, a real hub for arts and creativity in the town. I'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. Would any officer like to chip in with any further points? Nothing there. Any members have any comments? Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 27, and noting your introduction, and talking about the footfall in the town centre, and you were thinking about the possible levers for that, I just really wanted to explore your thinking around how that dovetails in with the rising car parking charges that you've got planned, which is 15% for some car parks. And I thought, well, we're thinking of levers that were totally within our gift. Why we hadn't thought of that one.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. We've certainly thought about them. We think about them frequently and repeatedly. I am pleased that we're reporting a footfall of 10.2 million versus our notional target of 12.3. While it does indeed show performance not quite to target, it is within range of what it is that we hope for. Not quite as strong as it is when Sean the Sheep's in town, but you can't have him. You can't have him here at all times. The wider response, I think, is to the balance of how it is that the town centre thrives for all residents, those that live in the town centre and those that live further away, who we hope and wish to encourage to come to the town by a variety of means. We need them to come by sustainable transport, we need them to be able to walk, we need them to be able to cycle and park bicycles, we need them to be able to easily get from one place to another, and indeed for those for whom it is necessary to be able to park. We've spent much time considering how we balance out these different priorities. They are important. I do indeed agree that car users, particularly from rural areas, need to have a fair and equitable means of accessing the town. That is important to us. We've considered it in the round, I think is the point that I would want to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Russell, do you have any follow-up to that? Councillor Field.
Thanks, Chair. Same item, the town centre footfall, something that occurred to me when I was reading through the papers. In Dorset, in the period immediately following COVID, bear with me, the NHS used commercial space as part of its recovery strategy, and it was very successful. I think in common with an awful lot of similar town centres, Maidstone has an awful lot of void retail, The NHS, in my limited experience, isn't wonderful at thinking outside the box about its estate, but I wonder if there's an opportunity for the Cabinet member to try and open a discussion with local NHS partners around the health strategy of community-based care being increased and the potential opportunity for the council to maybe broker stable space within the retail environment, because I think the reality is the future of our town centres isn't simply them being shopping destinations. And if statutory organisations like ourselves and our NHS partners can start to think about the town centre in those sorts of terms, that might increase footfall and also be of benefit to the wider objectives around public health and how the health service is being directed to deliver that one. So I just thought it was worth raising as a potential discussion for the Cabinet member.
That is well made, Councillor Field. It overlaps with a conversation that I've had at the Integrated Care Partnership at the time before the LGR arrangements were raised. I have continued to ask how it is that we maintain focus on these immediate points of progress to be able to integrate the community, both retail, health, residential, educational and so forth, to try to find out how it is that we can get developments in the NHS estate to dovetail with these other concerns, and that is indeed the spirit and motivation of my portfolio. As you know, that it includes so many different things. The LGR debate has indeed put something of a brake on it, but I have been pressing the point to say that we simply can't let that political reorganisation cause a complete stymieing and halt to progress in all other respects. And I'm pleased to report that the chair of the ICP, who is our leader of our Enabling Council over the hill, was extremely receptive to that, and I expect that conversation to happen next week when we next meet formally.
Thank you. Councillor Keeley.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a question on page 22, under the planning section. It says about the NBC success rate as planning appeals. That's quite a lot lower. I wondered if anything in particular had happened for that to happen, or if anybody's got any extra words on that, somebody could elaborate, or if there's anything that's needed, or what have you. Thank you.
I'll bring in Karen, who can add some detailed underpinning of that. But I think those of us who are on planning committee have noticed that there was a sudden dive in our performance as appeal of late, and I do wonder whether the planning inspectorate have been given refreshed guidance on kind of driving economic recovery through planning applications, because I'm not entirely sure that our decision making has changed that much. I mean, the local plan is relatively new, and that could be a juncture which could see change, but it's over a year old, and we weren't seeing those issues really before Christmas of last year, so it seems to be this year. But I don't know if Karen can add any kind of analysis on this.
and Councillor Spooner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I picked up on this as well, and I was going to ask if we could have some analysis of our success on appeals over, say, the last 12 months, and if there are any trends or if there are any issues arising, whether there's an increase in appeals being allowed, whether it's been either delegated or committee decisions, or whether there have been particular topics that have been involved. I have at the back of my mind Egyptian traveller sites. We've just heard Karen mention those, but also decisions on HMOs and whether some of these decisions reflect the inspectorate's thinking about landscape conservation and particularly the impact of our new local plan. So I'm wondering if we could have some analysis of why we think these figures may have dropped the way they have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Spooner. Perhaps if the officers could come back on that point, please. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Do any other members
Thank you very much.
Do any other members have any points? Okay. The report is for information only and is to be noted. Is that agreed that it is noted? Thank you very much. And at this point, for the next agenda item, which is item 11, I will hand over to our normal chairman.
Apologies for being delayed. I had someone working on my central heating and they overrun, trying to keep my house warm for the winter. I've got nothing to declare and I haven't been lobbied or anything like that. So now on to item number 11. I would like to thank Richard for starting the meeting off, and I'm sure he did very well. And so yeah, if we go on to item 11 on page 30, which is the second quarter update report, and that's been introduced by Councillor Summerskill. Or Adrian, yeah. Do you want to say a few words first?
Yes, thank you. The policy advisory committees all include budget monitoring with their remit, and so I'm appearing at all three. And this report sets out the position for the second quarter of 25-26, and also a projected position for the year. I'd remind members of the PAC that we produced a balanced budget for both revenue and capital at the start of the year. And for the council as a whole, a favourable variance of £197,000 is now projected for the current financial year, which is an improvement on the break-even position that we projected after quarter one. For the more detail, I'll now pass over to Adrian to give the itemisation.
Good evening, everyone. So in terms of details for this particular pack, the current position is an overspend of £98,000 for the revenue budget. This mainly relates to corporate property, particularly Lockmeadow, the Lockmeadow complex. That's mainly driven by the new units that have been taken on. So they've been a shortfall in income due to some rent-free periods as you normally get through the negotiation of any start of unit. Capital. Looking at the moment that there would be a slight underspend. Two areas really. One is the leisure provision. One was slightly adjusted through the audit process to bring some expenditure that we had in this year back into last year. So that's reflected in this year's underspend. And obviously public realm and greening, there's obviously slipped to next year. When the new capital programme comes forward, you'll see a more detailed plan for those in terms of Oil Street and Wick Street. I know in the background I've seen the procurement plan and other bits for East Street, so we know that's planning and going ahead as much as possible, so that will soon be coming to be seen around here. So that's where we are on that one. Obviously happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. I've got a couple of questions which I'm sure others might be thinking of as well. I notice on the revenue, so on page 37, obviously you explained corporate property, which was Lock Meadow. But if we look at economic development, recreation and sport and regulatory services, they're all showing, one assumes, underspends at the moment. And I didn't know whether those being, I would imagine, largely staff areas, was underspending because of staffing. I just wondered if there's any commonality between the three.
Yeah, happy to help with that one. So most aren't staffing related. So they're things like business support relates to the innovation centre. So they're going to not get their full occupancy of tenants, partly to do with the car parking, and therefore they're struggling to get people in. Corporate property we talked about is obviously Lock Meadow. The recreation and sports relates to the leisure centre and obviously the contract, so that's just a variation on that quite large contract. And the regulatory services is just doing better on income due to the taxi service and licensing on that area. So those are the sort of key drivers, not staff or anything else.
Okay, thank you for that. That's all quite encouraging on those. And my other comment was really on capital. Following on my theme from Tuesday night and last night at the full council, obviously concerned that there's a couple of areas of slippage here, and bearing in mind that we need to get all capital projects really in at contract stage, I would have thought by next October. I was just looking at the public realm and greening to the town centre, because obviously you're saying that we're likely to slip 1.7 million on that to next year. I just would, I suppose, look for some assurance that we are likely to actually shovels in the ground by the spring of next year, so that we know that money and project will go ahead. And the same thing, I suppose, on the items below it. The flood barrier, I think we probably just need to keep, because once we've got a unitary authority, they may be able to do it. Kent County Council's obviously got no intention of doing it, but it's better to keep the money in the budget so that at some point in the future that can be done. And I was just thinking about infrastructure delivery on the green spaces, to ensure that, again, we spend that on our parks and open spaces in the town centre or elsewhere next year.
So happy to try and deal with those. So in terms of the public realm stuff, as I said, part of my role is to sign off procurement plans. So I've literally just seen the one for Earl Street, and I know William, the director of that area, is pushing to get that procurement plan and the business case done ASAP. So I'm hoping that will progress fairly soon, and certainly start spending next year. In terms of the flood defence, there have been several meetings with KCC at a very senior level, including I know my own director and others that have tried to progress it. We are now resubmitting the business case to hopefully get that taken forward, still subject to KCC approval and so forth, but we would hope that, if it's not major work, that should hopefully finish sort of late summer next year.
Anybody else any questions I'd like to ask on this? Yeah, Councillor Field.
I mean, on the never-ending saga of the floodgate, I just wonder, has there been any progress in political conversations to perhaps see if we can motivate the officers at KCC?
A meeting did take place 2 weeks ago with Simon Jones, the corporate director, with the chief executive and the leader of the council and myself. But there is a very hard line from the county council that they are demanding an awful lot of engineering information and so on, which we don't do. Whereas our position is this was part and parcel of the original bridge gyratory scheme. You know, it was the quid pro quo for blocking up subways and various things that were going on. it was part of the original project, why is it not being delivered? But the response was very much, we've already responded and told you what you have to do.
So it continues to be as helpful as it has been today. Thank you.
It is clear that Kent County Council do not want to complete that piece of work unless Maidstone Borough Council, I think, significantly ups our contribution to the project.
And he didn't think the flooding was going to happen anyway.
If you any, Councillor Russell.
With that in mind, none of these amounts are actually like waiting for anybody anywhere, are they? They're just, they're in the capital. So at some point, that's a point in time when that contract gets signed or whatever, that you call that money, that we've either forward borrowed when we forward borrowed the 80 million, or we've got it, reserves or another pot that's specifically allocated to one thing. So if that is like very, very, very unlikely / never going to happen, what point do we go, well, let's just stop writing 402,000 in that row, because we could write it for something else, because it's not actual money in any of these pots. It's like an indication of projects that this council wants to do.
Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, that money for the flood is assigned for that and was provided, and it will carry on being sitting there for that project, because it was part of the money, as I understand it, that was assigned by KCC to MBC to do that.
Could we not consider unexcavating the closed up subway at the bottom of the high street? Because every day I have to walk across those wretched road junctions as opposed to going under the subway. And as you said, Tony, that subway was all closed off with flood prevention and blah, blah, blah. And then this one was going to have the special gates. Well, if we don't need to have special gates there, presumably we can unexcavate the subways we did close off and spend £402,000 on that. And a lot of people in West Maidstone would be quite happy. Claire.
Can I just ask, how much would it be for those floodgates to be put in? What's the shortfall from? I mean, that's probably a stupid question, because it's probably a lot more than the £400,000. But I get exactly what Claudine's saying. It's sitting there and it's not happening. And if they're not going to do it, how much more would we have to put to it for it to happen if we really wanted it to? And I don't know if we do. I'm kind of just tangenting off it because I don't know much about it. But if they're not going to do it, why are we holding on? I get exactly what you're saying, because could we do something with it, or could we move forward with it ourselves?
Yeah, so with my drainage engineer's hat on, the technical problem is it has to be tied in to the structure that's highways structure, and KCC will not at the moment give us permission to tie in our structure to their structure. Therefore you would have a gap through which water is very often good at getting.
It's rather catch-22, isn't it? Perhaps what we need to do is let the cabinet members have another chance with KCC, although I think it's unlikely they're going to be any more successful than they have been. And then perhaps we just need to consider what do we do with this, because it does look like it's unlikely to happen until we have a unitary, or wherever we end up, being merged to, which could be, a good few years away. So if there's no other comments, can we agree the recommendation, which is on page 31? So the revenue position at the end of Q2 for 25-26, including the actions taken or proposed, where significant variances have been identified, be noted, and the capital position at the end of Q2 for 25-26 be noted. I just wonder if it might be worth just adding in about about our concerns on the what do we call the flood barrier, which is gyratory, because it does seem to be, ask the cabinet what they can do to try to push it forward. Otherwise, we might just need to review it when we do the next meeting. So if everybody's happy with that, yeah, okay, great. Takes us on to item number 12, which is our last item, which is fees and charges for 2026-27. I assume Councillor Somerville will introduce this for us.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Each year, officers review the fees and charges set by the Council, and this report sets out the proposed fees and charges for services within this PAC's remit in Appendix A. The approach taken by officers when determining fees and charges is determined by the policy in Appendix B, which makes clear that cost recovery should be the basis of setting fees and charges. With CPI inflation currently running at 3.6%, the inflation actually experienced by the Council is a bit higher because payroll cost inflation tends to be a little higher, and payroll accounts for about half our expenditure budget. So generally, we've assumed fees and charge increases to be in the range 4 to 5%. I'll pass over to Adrian for the detail.
Thank you. So, yeah, in terms of this particular committee, PAC, there's a 5.81% increase. So that's around £122,000. Page 47 starts to go through some of that detail of which ones have gone up. We know the planning fees, some have gone up, obviously some haven't because they are set statutorily. So that's the overall position on that. Happy to obviously take questions. I do have one small amendment we'd like to make, if that's possible. So on page 50, we've got currently the heading of exhibitions charged entry. It's quite small if you're on the screen or not, so hopefully you can find that. We'd like to include a premium version of those as well, because currently we have smaller exhibitions which we feel are suitable for that price range, but we would like to increase for what we're calling premium ones, which are more sophisticated and tend to have a lot more interaction, to make sure that it partly recovers the costs of setting all those up, but also we also want to reflect the fact that it's what it is. So they're similar to the pricing we've got here. We'd do one for adult, child and family. Those prices would be, adult would be £8, child would be £5 and family would be 28. So as long as people are okay with that, we'll formally add that in so when it goes to Cabinet for them to consider. I know that's verbal, so happy to repeat that or ask any particular questions on that as well.
Thank you for that. Anyone, any questions on this? Councillor Field?
Sorry, you said the adults would be 8, the children would be 5,
yes,
and the family would be 28.
Yes.
Normally, the family ticket is 2 adults, 2 children. So why is the family ticket £2 more expensive than buying the individual tickets? Do we set it up for 3 children? Because that's outside of the statistical norm as I understand it.
So currently the family ticket is 2 adults and 3 children. That's how the standard is set up as well.
I'm just a visiting member to this committee, but it strikes me as odd because that is out of kilter with the national average of the size of a family. It seems odd to me, but I mean, okay.
Yeah, I think actually I agree with Councillor Field on that. You'd normally expect the family ticket to work out slightly cheaper if you're just an adult or 2 adults and 2 children. If we've got expecting people to be 2 adults and 3 children as the average family size, doesn't seem to match with most families, I wouldn't have thought. But perhaps we just ask the Cabinet to look at that when they
I don't want to labour the point, but I mean, as a parent, I would expect a family ticket to be 2 and 2 in most experiences. I only have one child and never buy one. But yeah, perhaps we could have a ticket for up to 3 children, but that reflected, maybe it'd be 25 instead of 26 or something.
Okay.
If I may, I think probably what you do is you get the family ticket if you've got more than 2 children, wouldn't you?
Well, you bring other kids along, don't you?
I think most people don't read detail, and if you say it's a family ticket and you take a family, you kind of expect the family ticket in the round to be cheaper, and for the average family it wouldn't be. It just seems like an anomaly. I don't really want to go too long on it. Really.
Stephen wants to explain himself, otherwise it seems a bit of a rip-off.
It appears that the non-premium fee is already a £1.50 discount for taking 2 children with 2 adults.
Do we have to formally ask someone to do the maths again and just correct it?
What we'll do is we'll ask the Cabinet to review that one thing when we agree the recommendations. Has anybody else any comments they want to raise on any of the other charges and fees tonight? If not, can we go and look at our recommendations, which are on page 4? Page 42. So there's 3 of them. So the first one's the contents be noted, but may choose a comment on the content. Then secondly, the fees and charges are detailed in Appendix A for planning and Health is Stronger Communities Policy Advisory Committee be approved, and the fees and charges policy as detailed in Appendix B be noted. And I would suggest we add in a 4th recommendation to the Cabinet that they consider the premium exhibition ticket charge at the museum further. If everyone's happy with that, yep, we can agree it. Great. That's it. Well, thanks everybody for coming. 35 minutes. Great. Okay, see you all. Everyone have a good Christmas if we don't meet before.